Sometimes the best way to defeat your enemy is to become your enemy.
So rustle up that blue feathered cap and bridle your chocobo. Here comes the Blue Mage.
Welcome everyone, I'm Sean, this is Tony, and today we're going to be looking at the Sorcerer subclass, the Blue Mage. Now this is one of the highest rated Sorcerers that's currently on D&D Beyond right now as of the recording of this video, and for good reason.
I love it. That's the reason.
And it's really cool. It's basically based off of something that we've seen in another medium.
Yeah, this is based off the Final Fantasy job of a Blue Mage.
Yeah.
Which is a unique take on Sorcerer, I will say the least. But, you know, it's interesting because it actually is something that no other class does.
Yes, the class focuses on taking things and abilities from the enemy and utilizing that and becoming part of your character. Now, this comes from Cowboy Tiefling, user on D&D Beyond. We love your username.
Howdy.
And let's go ahead and jump right in. So basically, once you pick this subclass, you get the ability called Azure Lore, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of this class. Essentially, whenever you're getting affected by an ability or a spell from a monster, you can use your reaction to make them do a check. Now, if it goes through, you basically get to add that ability to your, you can kind of say your spell list in a way. It's basically an ability that you gain yourself.
Right. This works on something called lore abilities. So the idea is you have a certain number of them based on your current level and your proficiency bonus. So it's half your sorcerer level plus your proficiency bonus, and you get to keep these lores that you get.
Yes, and it's important to note that you can't take from anything that's really powerful. So if the creature has a CR level higher than your level, you can't go and borrow those amazing, awesome features from the back.
So let's say that Hag has a really awesome ability that you want.
Yeah.
Number one, you have to get hit by it.
Yeah, that's
which
the thing
is interesting.
Too.
So you got to kind of survive about that. But then that Hag makes a check, and then you got to go, yoink, that's mine.
Right.
And now you have that ability that you can cast. Now, you're probably wondering, how exactly does that work? Does it use up a spell slot? Does it do this? And you would be right.
Yeah, so depending on the CR of the creature, so let's say if it was a CR 1 to 3 and you want to use that ability that you got from that said creature, you would essentially use up a first level spell slot, and it increases as the CR of that creature goes up.
The author has included this great little chart in there that shows challenge ratings from 1 and under to 18 and above. And it shows the type of spell slot that you get or that you would have to expend in order to use that ability, which is a pretty awesome thing. Something you should mention with that is it's not just spells. It could be any ability that a monster has.
Yeah, so if you really like the, bite ability from something, or if you like the fact that this creature can jump really high, these are examples of things that you can actually steal from monsters that you're fighting actively.
And part of that is an interesting point. If you've got, say, a bite from a guard drake, for example, that one's a little bit easier hitting. That's a challenge rating 2 than Anna's Hag, which would have challenge rating 6, and that one hits a little bit harder. So where you get your bite from matters.
Yeah, so like that first guard drake bite would only cost you a first level spell slot, but that stronger Anna's Hag bite would actually cost you a third level spell slot, just an example.
Right. Now you do get an ability called Azure Affinity.
Yeah, so you get some proficiency with longswords and scimitars and light armor. You also get a proficiency bonus doubled for any ability to check to identify monsters and their special powers. So again, kind of going along that focus.
But do you get that flashy blue mask like most of them wear?
I sure hope so.
Yeah,
I sure hope so. Maybe the DM can just hand you one and you can kind of get.
That's your initiation. You just get this mask, you put it on, and then you're set. Now, you know how I feel about consumption.
Yes, I remember our healing video. You didn't really like the part where we had to eat things. But basically your ability to gain new Azure abilities gets better with Arcane Consumption at level 6. So and now instead of trying to get hit by stuff, you can actually consume certain parts of the creature, like its heart or its brain, to learn the ability. Now, keep in mind, you still have to make a check or you throw up whatever you ate. But if you do make it, you actually get to add it to your Azure lore. Now, this is a little different this time. For each one that you do through the consumption skill, it actually uses up a sorcery point that you cannot take back.
And that is what we call balancing, my friends. So instead of having to be hit by it and possibly dying, you could break off a leg of a spider and eat the spider leg and then still make that check. But now you're losing a maximum number of sorcery points.
Yes.
So like if you had, 4 sorcery points, now you only have 3. Right. You have that ability.
And you can't turn it off, as they say, just by getting rid of the ability. Any of these Azure abilities that you learn, and you'll notice as you're leveling up, you can't remove these unless you fill them up and you learn a new ability to replace some of the older ones. So it enforces you to be strategic. You're not just going to want to grocery shop for everything that you're fighting. You want to be careful as to what you're taking from your encounters.
I would start with the T-Rex bite.
It's always good to borrow from a T-Rex.
That's right. Now, the other thing that we have on here is reactive learning, which is interesting.
Yeah. So basically, you can use counterspell without using a spell slot if you end up using a certain amount of sorcery points. And you can basically use this every long rest. A nice little thing here and there. It kind of goes along with that whole you kind of reacting to things. So counterspell kind of makes sense with this class.
Now, the only thing with that is, too, is that it says that you can increase the level of the spell by expending 4 sorcery points per level. However, if you're limiting your sorcery stuff because you're eating everything, you might not be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So there might be a point where you might not be able to defend against those higher level spells because you're inhabiting all these abilities. So it's something to consider when you're building your character.
That's at 14th level. Now, on 18th level, this is where things all come together.
Exactly. So one of the cool thing is all of those as your passive abilities that you picked up no longer cost sorcery points. So once you hit 18, you are like free reign and you get all those back, which is awesome. And you're no longer limited by CR. You can start learning legendary abilities as well.
Which I will point out, this is an 18th level
endgame stuff,
endgame edition thing. Most of us don't get to 18th level, probably because we get bored. But at the same time, there's not a lot of content out there for 18th level. But this I don't see as a bad thing. The only thing is legendary actions. You would have to do them on someone else's turn.
Yeah, so that is something to consider. But the fact that you can now have these awesome abilities as reactions is also a good thing as well.
I think that's really neat. So this is something that's been put together. And obviously the thing that we want to take away from this is that you can look at other mediums for stuff and inspiration about your game.
Yeah, so this is actually something that's already been a long time existing in Final Fantasy, but the fact that we can basically take these things from other things like games and movies and reflavor them and rework them into D&D 5e, for one, shows how open of a game 5e is, but it also shows you that you can take a lot of different ideas and still put them within the confines of the game while still creating something that's very brand new. I really, really like this because it's something different. It's something that not really any other class specializes in. This sorcerer is focused on, getting into combat, learning about enemies, and utilizing that as a way to fight, which is really cool.
And it's all about what the monster can do. And really the cool thing about this is you're not always looking at spells. You're looking at abilities that monsters get. When we look at NPCs, when we look at certain monsters and certain things, for example, going up against a beholder.
Right.
Who doesn't want that disintegration ray?
Of course.
But you have to get hit by it.
Yeah, and no one ever wants to get hit by disintegration, but as a blue mage, maybe that's what you're into. Maybe you want to absorb that, But again, it's a really neat subclass. I think it's something that's really original and something that we haven't gotten before. And more importantly, I think it's very well balanced. One of the important things of this class is that you have to be careful as to how you build your blue mage.
Absolutely. Now, if you want any tips on how to create something and balance it, or if you've got something you want us to look at, go ahead and send it to us. dmbrewcrew@gmail.com, right down there, and we'd be happy to take a look at it at any time.
Yes, and we also play test homebrew material like the Blue Mage on our bi-weekly stream called The Maw. We are on every other Tuesday at 7 p.m., so we have a chance to play test material that even you guys can send in to make sure that it is balanced. And as always, we do want to thank all of our Patreons for supporting us. Every dollar does help when it comes to getting materials to review, equipment, and other things that we kind of incur as a cost. So you can go down below to check out our Patreon if you want to support us, and we do appreciate it.
Yes, little by little, the chicken gets fat. And remember, the best campaigns are always the ones that are homebrewed. So until next time,
keep brewing.